This is by far the scariest, most bizarre situation I've ever been in. And after lurking for so long, I just have to share it. My boyfriend Dan and I had just started renting an apartment together, and money was tight. It was 2001, and we were both in our early 20s. I couldn't find a job and relied on word of mouth to earn some cash wherever I could. I love to clean and organize, so I gave friends and family the go-ahead to give out my name and number to anyone who could use my help over the summer. Dan, his brother, and Dad all did carpentry work and also got their work through word of mouth. None of them had too many exciting stories to tell, other than doing work in a hoarder's home, or odd requests as far as cabinet design or placement. Dan got a call from an elderly woman wondering if he could come by and give her an estimate on finishing her kitchen. She said that her husband had died before he could install the cabinets and countertop that he purchased, and someone from her church gave her his number. He said absolutely and offered to come out the next day. She objected and said, "This needs to be done now. That's why I called. They said that you could help me. What am I supposed to do? I'm an old woman. I live alone. My husband died." Dan was a pretty chill guy and kept calm, explaining that I had his car and wouldn't be home from running errands for a couple of hours, and by then it would be too dark for him to come out. Let me also note that although Dan has a soft, not very masculine voice, he was a big guy, about 6'4" and muscular. The old lady perked up and asked, "Will she be coming along tomorrow?" in the sweetest voice. Dan said, looking back, this should have been a red flag by the tone in her voice, and the fact that she was so adamant about him coming right at that moment. But as soon as she heard that he had a girlfriend, she changed her tune and got excitement in her voice, asking about the next day like it was no problem for her to wait. He didn't see anything weird about it at the time and felt bad for her because he thought she must have been lonely and wanting some company to talk to. The next day, we both head out to her house. We brought along a small bouquet of flowers that we got at the grocery store to give to her. I figured she would enjoy chatting while Dan checked out her kitchen, and maybe I could come back with Dan and help her with other things around the house while he worked if she needed. Her township was about 45 minutes away, but I was excited to go because this township is known to have really awesome old houses and mansions. There are other normal subdivisions, depending on which direction you drive. My friends and I back in high school used to drive there just to cruise around and look at the neat houses. When we pulled up to the old lady's house, I was eager to go inside because it was such a cute-looking house from the outside, very fairy tale-ish, gray with white trim, with vines climbing up the side of the house. It was a shotgun-style house, so it looked tiny from the front. The small lawn was overgrown and messy, but I thought it added a charm to the home. We knock on the door and are greeted by a tiny elderly woman, shorter than me, and I'm 5 foot. She had on a dirty nightgown and even dirtier slippers. She looked past Dan and smiled widely at me while reaching her bony hands out to grab my face. I hold up the flowers to deflect and say, "Dan wanted to bring you some flowers." She lost her smile, grabbed the flowers, and said, "Kitchen's through here." She turned around to lead us, revealing a brown stain on the back of her nightgown. Dan and I look at each other, and he makes a goofy, grossed-out face. I make a judgmental face back and swat his arm as if to say, "Be nice, she's an old woman." We walk through a dark living room, nothing really out of the ordinary other than the smell, which was like cigarettes, mold, and body odor. We enter the kitchen. There's a closed door about 10 to 12 feet ahead, leading to rooms further back in the house. There's a man sitting shirtless at the kitchen table in the corner. He was hairy and overweight, with greasy hair down to his shoulders. The old lady said, "This is my son, Marcus." He was probably in his late 30s, early 40s. He said nothing but stood up and took his bowl to the sink. Great. Marcus has no pants on, just dirty, and I mean crazy dirty, tidy whiteys with several holes around the waistband. I shoot Dan the same grossed out look that he shot me earlier. He jokingly shoots me back a judgmental look and swats my arm. I give him a "no, seriously, I'm creeped out" look, and he nods to acknowledge it. "So, what cabinets are you?" Dan tried to ask, but was interrupted with Marcus pointing to the flowers and asking the old lady,
"Where are those from?"
She points to Dan, and Marcus snatches the flowers out of her hand, throws them into an open trash bag sitting on the floor, and walks out of the kitchen into the living room we just walked through. He just lost his dad, so I assume he had some sort of mental disability and was being sensitive to another dude showing his mom attention. So, where are the cabinets and the countertops you need installed?" Dan asked the old woman. "I thought you were bringing them," she huffed out, sounding shocked that he would even ask. I'm sorry, I thought you said that your husband bought them and you needed them installed," Dan said, confused and a bit nervous at how the woman is reacting. "So you brought nothing? What is it you do? What is it you're going to try to sell me?" She gets closer to Dan as she's throwing her hands up in disbelief and anger. Marcus comes quickly stomping in at the sound of his mother's distress. Rushing in from the other door past the kitchen was another man, around the same age. Wonderful. This guy is in his underwear, too. Fucking dirty, tidy whiteys. This woman told Dan on the phone that she lived alone. This new guy freezes just past the doorway and just stares at me, standing feet away. Marcus rushes forward and stands between us and his mother and pushes her out toward the living room. Both doors are blocked by the fucking tidy whitey twins. Dan scoops me behind him in an attempt to block me from both guys. "We gotta be heading out now," he said calmly, hoping not to escalate things. We hear the old lady squawk out loud from the living room. Marcus doesn't move. "I'll see what I can do about the cabinets," Dan says, as we inch forward. Marcus barely inches forward, but still blocks the way. I frantically tug on Dan's arm to get him to look over at the other guy, now with his hand down his dirty underwear rag, masturbating. That's when my calm, chill boyfriend loses it. I've never heard him scream like this. He remembers growing up. His older brothers taught him how to deal with bullies. Say some crazy, messed up shit to them, and they'll be too stunned to react. Dan screams with rage, veins popping, spit flying. Marcus looked surprised as he rushed past us towards his brother. We both thought that he was going to attack Dan, so he instinctively threw up his fist to defend himself. Marcus pushes his brother into the other room and slams the door behind them. Dan and I hurry out of the house. I think the old lady was sitting in the dark in the living room, but I didn't stop to look around as we were scurrying out. We called the cops when we got home. Didn't have cell phones back then, but nothing really came of it because they didn't really do anything wrong. He didn't expose himself. They didn't try to attack us. They agreed it was bizarre, but nothing they can do about it. We asked around, but nobody really knew who these people were, so we're not sure how she got our number. I don't know if they were just mentally ill, if she lied on purpose to get us over there, or why things happened the way they did. It was just scary as shit, feeling boxed in and not knowing what these creepy, almost naked dudes were thinking. ever since then, I tend to avoid going inside other people's houses unless I really know them. I recently received a friend request that reminded me of this story, so I'm going to share it here. This happened after I went to university, so I was 18. I made an effort to make friends after I moved onto campus and ended up with a few groups to hang out with, including a new girlfriend and plenty of people from my classes that I liked well enough. There was one class before lunch where it was traditional for people to go to the cafeteria afterwards to eat in pairs or threes. I wasn't very discerning about who I'd have lunch with because I got on fine with most people from class, and we were all trying to make an effort to be social. So, when one girl, Lily, asked if I wanted to eat lunch together after class, I didn't have any reason not to go. We talked about school and that kind of thing, nothing noteworthy, but she did ask me to get lunch with her again the next week. It became a pattern, and there wasn't exactly a way to start saying no suddenly. It was fine, but it did mean that I lost the chance to eat lunch with anyone else on those days. In hindsight, I suppose that was the point. One day in class, I asked someone if I could add them on social media. This happened right in front of Lily. I saw her face jerk towards me from a couple of seats over. It was such a sharp reaction that it was hard to ignore, and I still remember it. By the time I got home later that day, Lily had sent me a friend request. No friends in common. Don't know how she knew my last name. I was a bit surprised, but I guess she just dug through the university's social media pages and found me through there. It gave me a bad feeling, but surely it was fine. She ended up messaging me a lot and commenting on anything I posted. I told myself that she was just awkward, and we became friends, if not close. I'd known worse people. She still always got me to go eat lunch with her after our one shared class. Other than that, we rarely spent time together in person. I saw her around sometimes, but I never went out of my way to hang out with her. So, it was mostly online messaging and seeing each other in group settings. Coincidentally, my girlfriend was also called Lily. This was something that clearly bothered Lily, not my girlfriend, who couldn't have found it less interesting. It's a common name. She occasionally hinted that she wanted my girlfriend to pick a different name or joked about her not suiting it. She clearly didn't like my girlfriend at all, and I had an idea of why. It was hard to ignore by this point. Lily was starting to unsubtly hint that she had a crush on me. I tried not to address it because what was I going to say? I've never known what to do when a friend makes a pass at me. I was also not interested in the least, even ignoring the weird stuff she pulled. Lily was not my type. She tended to dress and act in a way somewhere between a 50s housewife and one of those adults who is still obsessed with Disney princesses, if you can picture that. Things took an uncomfortable turn on the day of our last shared class of the year. Instead of asking me to lunch like she usually did, Lily asked if I'd go on a walk with her. Again, I didn't exactly know how to refuse, so I said all right. Our campus was bordered by a large patch of woodland. Lily led me into the woods, and the sounds of our fellow students slowly faded away. She sat down on a log, and I joined her. She started talking about how she was going to miss me over the summer. I tried placating her, but I didn't want to be there. especially because she seemed almost on the verge of tears. I think I tried to make an excuse about having plans with my girlfriend, but before I could leave, Lily chose to kiss me without warning. It was uncomfortable, to say the least. I got out of there and was happy to think that I wouldn't see her for a while. I came back to university after the summer, moving into a house with my friends. Without going off topic, there were some serious issues in my friend group. A lot of petty arguing and worse. I broke up with my girlfriend around the start of the school year as well, and basically the whole mess made me recontextualize things with Lily because it suddenly didn't seem as bad. That said, I didn't want to be alone with her. We mostly talked online. She was still constantly messaging me, after all. One upside of everything was that I started dating a boy. Lily was not pleased to hear the news. I think she hoped to sneak in after I broke up with my girlfriend, but as I said before, that was never going to happen. There wasn't a big gap between my breakup and my new relationship, so she must have thought that she'd missed her chance to be with me. This is where the story gets bad. At this time, I was fairly active on Tumblr. I occasionally talked about my life and mostly reblogged photos and stuff. I was on there one day when something odd happened. One of the blogs I followed had received an ask with some phrase I recognized. It took a second to register that it was taken from my About page. That made me freeze. I read the message properly. Someone was asking this completely random person to analyze a section of text from my page, asking for their opinion on the type of person who would write it. I cannot stress how messed up it was to see people talking about me like I was a character in a book they were trying to study. The reply was basically, "I don't know, sorry," but the important thing was that the question hadn't been anonymous. It linked to somebody's blog. Obviously, I wanted to know who had taken such a bizarre interest in me. As far as I knew, no one in real life, other than my boyfriend, knew about my page. Well, no prizes for guessing who was behind it. What I found was like a shrine. She was using a fake name, but I recognized Lily all over that thing. It was this cutesy pink and red page. There were a few posts about her interests, but most of the content was focused on her primary interest, me. Most of the posts were about me. There were accounts of things I'd done recently. He told me about such and such. He went to a nightclub recently, etc., as well as references to things from as far back as I'd known her. It was clear she'd been keeping tabs on me, both online and off, gathering up every scrap of information she could about my life and hoarding it here in her collection. She talked about us eating lunch together and how special our dates had been to her, as if it was anything more than acquaintances getting food after class. She talked about the time she had forcibly kissed me in the woods, but she wrote it as if it had been mutual. She quoted lyrics from my favorite song and talked about how she'd always been there for me, no matter who else came into my life. Lots of references to loving me just the way he is, which answered another mystery about an anonymous love letter I'd received earlier that year with the same wording. It got worse. There were a lot of posts about my boyfriend as well. They weren't so nice. They got vicious, talking about how he didn't deserve me. He didn't know what he had. If she was with me, she'd be jealous of anyone who came near me. So my boyfriend, not being a jealous person, meant that he didn't love me. It was angry and hateful. I didn't like to think about the sort of person who could write so obsessively, being fixated on me. One thing that didn't make sense at first was the blog that also made plenty of references to Lily's best friend, Steven. She had never mentioned this person to me. Her post talked a lot about Steven and how great of a friend he was and how much fun they had together, how he looked out for her, etc. I was trying to work out whether this was an online friend when one specific post made it all click. She had posted a photo and captioned it with, "Steven sent this to me. He knew I'd like it, and I love it." The problem was, the photo was taken from my own page. I hadn't sent it to her. She took it from my page and then claimed this fictional best friend of hers shared it with her because, in her head, she'd split me into two people. In her messed up fantasy life, I was both the perfect best friend who was always looking out for her and her soulmate who was bound to end up with her when I finally got over my sweet and kind boyfriend and all the other easy girls I hung out with that she made dozens of posts complaining about. Who was she complaining to? Oh, Lily had an audience. She asked open questions about me and her relationship with me, and got messages back from her followers. People who took what she said at face value. I saw a bunch of random people agreeing with this stalker that my boyfriend didn't deserve me, and we were bound to break up soon, so I could be with Lily, the person I was clearly supposed to be with. She had this fake fan fiction version of my life up for anyone to share their opinion on, and she'd made herself out to be the hero of it all. I went maybe a month back into this page's history. I did not look at everything that was there. It was too much. So, I'm not sure how long this had been going on. I sent Lily a message confronting her about the blog. She said nothing, and I cannot stress how weird it was to have found pages and pages dedicated to me, with her talking about how she was in love with me and would make sure we ended up together, slamming my boyfriend and building a fantasy life with two different versions of me in it that she clearly believed to be real, then acting like it hadn't happened. She said nothing. She didn't address it. She just changed the subject, even after I pushed, and it was like she hadn't even registered what I said. I've never seen anything like it. She deleted the page, of course, or at least changed the name and hid it so I never found it again. It wasn't the end, though. I wasn't going to hang out with her anymore, but we were still shoved together in classes, and she had started to actually scare me with what she might do next. I'm kind of a paranoid person. Knowing someone was obsessively keeping track of me for who knows how long freaked me out. The next thing she pulled was trying to seduce my boyfriend. It was an absolutely useless attempt that only made him uncomfortable. He told me about it right away. What was her plan there? Did she hope to tell me he cheated and wait for me to break up with him? Why would I want her after that? When that didn't work out for her, she tried hitting on 3 of my other friends. None of them took the bait. She ended up dating one of my former housemates for a while, but made sure to send me messages while they were together, letting me know that she'd rather be with me. No thanks. Lily made sure to stay in my life the whole time I was at university. There was a time when I tried to pull away from her, and she ended up starting rumors about me and damaging career opportunities that I'd put a lot of work into. I don't know what else she did behind my back, but it made me realize it was safer to let her think that she was a part of my life while ignoring her, rather than doing something that would cause her to get angry. After I graduated, Lily still wanted to spend time together, but I knew I didn't have to now. I made excuses about work and barely talked to her at that point. I almost entirely stopped posting on social media that I knew she knew about. Of course, she didn't give up that easily. She tried to start conversations, asked me to meet up with her, attempts I usually ignored. I didn't like to think that she was still tracking me online, but she probably was. I don't know how, but she'd occasionally reference things I mentioned online somewhere she shouldn't have known about. The last time we had a real conversation, she sent me a message out of nowhere. We hadn't spoken at all in months, and we hadn't talked about anything serious in much longer than that. Thinking about that conversation still makes my skin crawl, but I'll summarize what happened. At first, she asked me some questions about how long that I'd known I was queer. I told her some basic stuff, the kind of thing I'd tell anyone who asked. Then, she changed the subject. She started talking about how would I feel about her if she was a boy, about wanting to be a boy for me. The messages quickly became fetishistic. She went into plenty of detail about fantasies she had of the two of us. Again, we were not friends at this point. We'd never been especially close, at least not from my perspective, and we had barely spoken for years. I can't imagine sending messages like that to even a close friend, let alone someone who barely knows you. I tried telling her not to pull this crap with me, but she decided to change tactics. She sent photos of herself, followed by a bunch of messages, maybe 4 or 5 a minute, way too fast for me to reply before the next one would arrive, basically quoting back what I told her about myself and my past earlier. She was telling me these things as if they had happened to her. She was role-playing as me. The worst part was that she seemed to believe it was real, that those things actually happened to her, even when she was quoting me word for word. Things I'd told her only hours before were now her life. It was like she was trying to absorb my history, to take it over, to make my life part of her. Yeah, I didn't talk to her again after that. I ignored future attempts she made to talk to me, and I even silently deleted her from the inactive social media, which was her only real way of contacting me. I really thought she might finally move on. A few days ago, she sent me a friend request. It's sitting in the unanswered, because I know if I delete it, she'll only send me another one. Lily and I met nearly 12 years ago. This story is just the highlights, and even then, it's only the stuff I know about for sure. A lot happened behind my back. I know it did. So, girl who spent 12 years obsessing over me, fetishizing me, stalking me, and harassing me. Let's not meet again. The fantasy life you built for the two of us in your head is the only place you'll be seeing me anytime soon.